Welcome to the Town of Southampton Conservation Board meeting of June 26, 2026. I invite everyone to rise for the salute to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will wait on the acceptance of the minutes as we don't have, unless someone who was not in attendance last time has heard the minutes. We'll move on to the advisory reports for the planning board. Caleb Kirscheville.
Good evening, Marty Shea, Chief Environmental pending subdivision application stage.
Sorry, Marty, the microphone.
Start over again. Good evening, Marty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. This is a pending two-lot subdivision application that's in the pre-application phase that the planning board has referred for advisory comment. The track is located at 4098 Noyak Road in the hamlet of Noyak. There are two brief recommended advisory comments. The first indicates that the preliminary subdivision map of Caleb Kirscheville, as prepared by Robert A. Smith, dated November 13, 2025, with a latest revision date of March 4, 2026, needs to be revised to identify the on-site wetlands as a wetland preservation area, as well as to depict a 75 feet wide naturally vegetated wetland, non-disturbance, non-fertilization buffer extending landward of the wetland boundary. And second, a section 292-39B referral needs to be forwarded to the Conservation Board.
Motion to send those comments to the planning board.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hampton Park Estates.
This is a subdivision that's in the pre-application phase. The track is located at 471 North Sydney Cox Road in the hamlet of North Sea. There are several recommended advisory comments. The first indicates that based upon an Environment Division field assessments completed on both May 1st, 2026 and June 3rd, 2026, subject tract is marked by mature open groves of mostly sycamore and Norway maple above mowed grass. Second, groves of trees such as these provide essential air and water purification, scenic benefits, songbird habitat, carbon sequestration, thermal cooling, windbreaks, and energy savings. Therefore, their retention can not only aid in maintaining the environment and community character, but can also significantly enhance real estate values. As such, these trees should be protected to the maximum extent practicable. Thirdly, this end can best be achieved by setting limitations on tree removal, modeled after the goals and provisions of section 330-67, which is protection of natural vegetation, and recently locally adopted land disturbance law. Recommended tree clearance standards for application to proposed lots 1 to 3 include a maximum allowable site disturbance of 25% of the lot area. 4, there are large stockpiles of cut trees and discarded branches within the bounds of the planned easterly scenic easement corridor, which need to be removed, with the remaining affected area left to naturally recover.
Motion to send those comments to the planning board.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? CBE US NY West Hampton 243.
This is a pending site plan application for a property located at 80 Sunrise Highway in the hamlet of Remsenburg, Spionk. There are several recommended advisory comments. The first indicates that the planned deer fence installation runs counter to the intended goal of restoring natural habitat within the bounds of the conservation easement, which was conveyed to the Central Pine Barrens Joint Planning and Policy Commission, and poses severe risk of injury and mortality to wildlife. As such, the fence barriers should be prohibited. Second, there needs to be landowner commitment to providing an annual monitoring report to track native vegetation recovery, wildlife use, and habitat functionality during the mandatory 3-year 85% plant survival period post-completion of planting in order to evaluate the success of the required reclamation. And thirdly, the seed mix dash shade wet and seed mix dash sunny wet plant keys on the overall landscape plan need to be corrected to read and corrected genus and species for an individual plant is so noted.
Motion to send those comments to the planning board.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? JWD 4 LLC subdivision.
This is a subdivision that's in the application phase for a tract that's situated at 732 Lumber Lane in the hamlet of Bridgehampton. There are two recommended advisory comments. First indicates that based upon a May 29, 2026 Environment Division field assessment, the Conservation Board supports the, quote, planned residential map to accompany pre-application submission for property of JWB4 LLC situated Bridgehampton, end of quote, as prepared by Vincent Gordiello, dated March 20, 2026, as the plat calls for establishment of an agricultural reserve, which would be contiguous with the preserved agricultural lands to the north. Second, there are large mature maple, spruce, and cherry around the existing dwellings and accessory buildings. These trees are a valued natural resource and should be protected to the maximum extent practicable.
Motion to send those comments to the planning board.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? The administrative wetland permits are in your packets. Resolution conditional approval, A019131, the Patricia Lynn Prue Revocable Trust, and the applicant request postponement to July 8th, 2026.
I guess no more progress from these people? They're all asking for adjournments again?
Not yet on, I had advised the applicant for the Patricia Lynn Prue Revocable Trust that the plan that they submitted was not consistent with what the board had asked for, and that they either needed to revise the plan or file for a modified conditional approval, and they have yet to submit a revised plan.
If it goes on too long, the site conditions are going to be much different. The season's, in full growing season now, is going to have a lot of stuff that could potentially be different than when we last looked at it, so they should be aware. Reopen a hearing and go back and look at it again.
Yeah, likely when any plan is received, it will necessitate that I revisit the site to reassess the site conditions.
Okay.
Motion to postpone to July 8th, 2026.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
A025011, 41 Tarpon Road LLC, and the applicant requests postponement to July 8th, 2026.
And I'll just provide an update on this. The applicant recently contracted out to a new agent to represent them We provided that agent with all the essential documents, and that happened during the past week, and we're waiting on the applicant to resubmit.
Motion to postpone to July 8th, 2026.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 025021, Mark Charbonneau and Donna Charbonneau, and the applicant.
Just as
Postponed to July 8th, 2026.
And just as an update on this, I did have recent communications with the applicant's consultants, and they're still in the process of coming forward with the required buffer restoration. I had, as indicated at the prior meeting, I had also met recently with the landowners at the property in order to reassess the site conditions, and the conditions have remained the same.
Motion to postpone to July 8th, 2026.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 025054, Charlie Denby and Elspeth Velton. The applicant requests postponement to July 8th, 2026.
I did communicate with the applicant's consultant in the past week, and it looks like in the last couple of days they finally submitted the requested plan consistent with the board's direction on this. So I anticipate that we'll be proceeding with this application at the next Conservation Board meeting.
Thank you.
Motion to postpone to July 8th, 2026.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 026021, 18 Adnil LLC. Any discussion?
Move to issue.
Second.
Resolved that a conditional wetland permit approval granted to 18 Adnil LLC for the proposed project upon the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Preliminary review, secret determination, A 024060, Carter Simpson and Sloan Simpson. The applicant requests postponement to July 8th, 2026.
I did in the past 2 weeks email the applicant for an update on this application to see whether or not they yet want to proceed with this application, or whether or not they're going to come forward with a plan consistent with the recommendations of the advisory report, and I have not heard back yet.
Motion to postpone to July 8th, 2026.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 025048, Diane Warrenis. Applicant requests postponement to July 8th, 2026.
Again, as an update, I did reach out to the applicant during the past 2 weeks to request a status, an indication as to whether or not they planned on proceeding with this application or withdrawing the application, and or when they anticipated coming in with a revised plan. And I have not heard back from the applicant.
Motion to postpone to July 8th, 2026.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? A 025055, 2268 Deerfield LLC.
Good evening again, Marty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. This is an application that is seeking a permit in order to redevelop a property in the hamlet of Noack on Deerfield Road that has very extensive state and town regulated freshwater wetlands. The advisory report dated June 22nd, 2026 on record provides a detailed history of prior permits and approvals, and indicates that notwithstanding the many requests for the applicant to go forward with certain remedial actions in order to correct unauthorized improvements at the property. All of those permits and approvals had expired without any action taken by the former or present landowner. Subsequently, in March 2005, there was a massive fire which virtually destroyed the entirety of the existing two-story residence at the property, which prompted the landowner to come forward with a previously requested new Conservation Board wetland permit application. I had extensive meetings with the applicant. I had to reflag the wetland boundaries, provide a lot of direction and detail in terms of needed wetland impact mitigation measures. The applicant has expressed that they are amenable to all of the recommendations. There is some concern that the wetlands on site may support endangered species. So at my request, the applicant has filed for an incidental take permit from the DEC. The DEC has confirmed receipt of that application, but has not responded. In the event that an incidental take permit is needed, there's some potential for the DEC to ask for some very minor modifications to the new site improvements. But otherwise, the plans that have been put forward are compliant with the required wetland non-disturbance, non-fertilization buffers. All the unauthorized improvements at the property will be corrected. The applicant has, in response to this report, has already confirmed twice today that they are already in the midst of responding to my advisory report, in that they are preparing the needed revised revegetation plan and revised survey. So the applicant has agreed to the recommended mitigative measures. Thereby, we have sufficient information to make a determination on this application. As such, recommending that the public hearing requirement be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing.
Second.
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-80 of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 026012, the Sandra R. Meyer Revocable Trust.
This is a pending application for a property with frontage on Sagaponack Pond in Bridgehampton. There are plans for redevelopment of the site. The applicant is seeking a wetlands permit, as much of the proposed clearing on the property would occur within 200 feet of the wetland boundaries. They have proposed a covenanted wetland preservation area and a covenanted naturally vegetated wetland non-disturbance, non-fertilization buffer extending 75 feet landward of wetlands. They have also since offered an additional 25-foot wide non-covenanted buffer where an existing natural vegetative cover would be cleared and removed and replaced with new native plantings. This is an application that requires both town wetland and land disturbance permits. So the advisory report, which is dated June 23rd, 2026, does offer preliminary recommendations with regards to whether or not the application is compatible with the new land disturbance code and offers a drawing requesting significant natural vegetation protection in a manner that would appear to be consistent with the requirements of the new law. That being said, as the land disturbance law charges the land management administrator with issuing the land disturbance permit in this case. The administrator, upon receipt of my advisory report, has asked that we schedule a public hearing on this application, and that in the interim, she will provide an advisory report and report back to the Conservation Board with regards to whether or not this application is indeed subject to the land disturbance law, and if so, what, if any, limitations should be placed on site disturbance. Because notwithstanding that the proposed natural vegetation clearing is beyond the buffers that are being offered, a large part of it is within 200 feet of wetlands, so would need to be permitted by this board. So there is a resolution before you to schedule a hearing to provide sufficient opportunity for the land management administrator to review the project plans and provide an advisory report to this board as to how to proceed.
Motion to schedule public hearing for July 22nd.
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby schedules the public hearing for July 22nd, 2026, and that a notice of public hearing be published in town designated newspaper pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-8C of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 026023, Raimondi Joint Revocable Trust.
This application relates to an existing residentially developed property that has frontage on a mill pond, also known as Lake Dona, in the hamlet of Watermill. There is a preliminary advisory report on file dated June 23rd, 2026. The application has been made in order to seek a wetland permit from this board, as the landowner is seeking to expand the existing home, to remove existing decks, to upgrade the sanitary system, to construct a swimming pool, hot tub, and extensive patio areas as well. As part of the application, the applicant has offered a preliminary wetland buffer plan for the site. As indicated by the June 23rd, 2026 advisory report, I'm recommending that the buffer be significantly expanded, consistent with a drawing I provided to the applicant. I'm also asking that the hot tub be relocated to increase wetland construction setbacks, and in light of the apparent need for significant zoning variances for the proposed swimming pool, asking that the applicant evaluate scaling back of that construction. The report indicates that in the event that the applicant is amenable to all the recommendations contained in this advisory report, that we could waive the hearing, but it also indicates that absent such agreement, we need to schedule a hearing. As I have not heard back from the applicant, There is a resolution before you to schedule a public hearing for this application.
Motion to schedule a public hearing for July 22nd.
Second?
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby schedules a public hearing for July 22nd, 2026, and the notice of public hearing be published in the town designated newspaper pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-8C of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution to issue modification, CB 25012 Big Fresh Pond Road LLC.
As indicated by the draft resolution before you, this application relates to a Conservation Board wetland permit that was issued on March 25, 2025, in order to allow for certain additions and improvements to an existing residence that abuts town and state regulated freshwater wetlands in the hamlet of North Sea. The permit was conditioned upon the establishment and restoration of a covenanted naturally vegetated buffer. The covenant was recorded, so the permit was issued. The applicant has since indicated that they're looking to expand the footprint of the second-story addition, yet stay within the confines of the existing dwelling, thereby necessitating that a modified wetland permit be issued. The site conditions have remained the same, and there is no indication that the plan modifications would result in any new or significant adverse wetland impacts that were not previously addressed. As such, there is a resolution before you to allow for issuance of the needed modified wetland permit, so the applicant then can proceed with filing for an amended building permit as well.
Motion to issue the modification.
Resolved that a wetlands permit modification be issued to Big Fresh Pond Road LLC for the proposed project with the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And it is 7 o'clock. We can begin the public hearing portion of the agenda. A021076, Nicholas Christopher and Penelope Christopher, and the applicant requests adjournment to August 26, 2026. Is there anyone in the public or on Zoom that wishes to speak on this application before we adjourn it?
No one on Zoom.
Motion to adjourn till August 26, 2026.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A025019, Stephen Tempesta and Jennifer Tempesta.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Aram Terchuni in First Coastal, West Hampton Beach, New York, on behalf of the applicant. Good evening, all. And I only have two very short documents to hand up to you tonight. One is just a brief outline of what I'm going to say this evening. I thought it would be useful just to give you an outline overview of what we've done so far.
Excuse me, Aram, is that new information?
No, it's just a summary.
That was what was recently provided, correct?
I actually go back to the beginning of the application.
Oh, okay, all right, so it's
There should be enough there for you.
It's nothing new.
No, it's not any new information.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. So, to review the application, this is to demolish an existing residence that's built on concrete block, to relocate it landward and place it on pilings in conformance with both FEMA and the New York State Residential Building Code, and includes elevating to meet the freeboard standard of 2 feet in the building code, as well as the 18 inches of sea level rise also in the residential building code. In addition to that, it was originally the application for a rock revetment because this area has suffered significant long-term chronic erosion, and this is basically the last-ditch effort to preserve the building envelope of the house, which is actually being relocated landward. Throughout the discussion, we've modified our application to add a cobble beach berm on top of the rock revetment. We had a discussion about that before, and I'll go into it a little bit more right now. But just, at the first page, I just wanted everybody to, get a sense of the level of effort that the applicant and the staff and the board have put into this over the last year that we've been reviewing and discussing it, including, the preliminary advisory report created by staff, the applicant's response to that, the public hearing on November 5th, and then the items that the board asked us to investigate that we did, and then reported back on April 8th, where the board again asked us for additional investigations, which we accomplished. And then when we met most recently, on May 13th, the board asked us to undertake two additional reviews. That material was prepared and submitted. I'd like to I believe you all have copies of that. They were dropped off in the office about more than a week ago.
It's in the file. Here's a holdover with this map on.
Yeah, I think we all got. Karina, make sure we all got them.
Yeah, I emailed the chief.
So the first thing that we submitted was a revised set of plan and section of our proposal prepared by Delandro Andrews Engineering. This document right here. And the changes that we made to that involve placing, as I said, the cobble beach berm on top of the proposed rock revetment. And I'll get into why we did that in a moment. And then extending the returns on either side of the revetment landward an additional 5 feet, from 10 feet to 15 feet. And that was done at the request of the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. Then the board asked us to, well, they didn't ask us to. The question was, what other, I'm a step ahead of myself. The board asked us to investigate a community-based project here, and the applicant agreed to undertake that investigation. We presented that information to the board at the last hearing. All of the property owners, I believe there are 8 property owners, and it's about 800 or 900 foot long section of shoreline. Every one of those property owners was mailed a copy of a proposed community-based plan, which was a cobble beach, and which is the alternative that we felt was the most appropriate. And that leads to the reason why we incorporated a cobble beach into our project. Although a cobble beach can be effective when used in a series of properties, it cannot be effective when used on a single 60-foot wide piece of property, because it's too short a stretch and the material will get spread too quickly. There's a minimum length that shoreline restoration projects have to be in order to be effective, and in this case, it's around 800 to 1,000 feet. So we didn't feel that the cobble was an appropriate solution for a single property, although it is for a group of properties. But at significant additional expense, the Tempestas have incorporated that into their project as a potential proof of concept. see if that actually will work. I don't think it will, and none of the science shows that it will. But it would then, if there was a community project going forward, it would then be compatible with that project. So that was the reason for adding the cobble berm on top of the revetment. But one of the things was that the board said, or I heard the board say, hey, what interim solutions are available? What else can you do as a, because I believe we made the point pretty clearly that the rate of erosion here is so dramatic that, that this house is in danger right now, and we need to act expeditiously to avoid, catastrophic damage. So what I did was I prepared this document called Interim Flood and Erosion Control Alternatives. And what I did there was I walked through everything starting from the softest alternative, which is vegetation, through sand and gravel fill, which would be the next step up, then sand and gravel with vegetation, then into bioengineering, such as core logs with or without vegetation, and up to geotextiles, which would be really the highest level of interim protection. And so I don't want to, I would like to respond to questions you have about our analysis, and I'll just, hit the highlights here. I don't want to spend all the board's time, going through every step. But if you look on page 4 of that report, you can see this is a form called the Vegetative Treatment Potential that was created by the United States Department of Agriculture, believe it or not, in the 70s, to look at how to stabilize shorelines with vegetation. And you fill out the form based upon the site conditions, including the fetch across water, the slope of the beach, and other items. And
Well, fine, thank you very much.
And as you can see, when you add up the scores, its recommendation is it's not going to work. The next thing we looked at, which are sand and gravel fill with or without vegetation, we went back through, we've looked at this before, the board has looked at this before. The Suffolk County Department of Public Works pumped up a 90 or 100-foot wide beach here, which was gone in less than a year. So clearly that solution's not going to work. On the bioengineering, which I believe Member Schultz brought up at the last meeting, we have a lot of experience in this. We've built literally dozens and dozens of these throughout Southampton. On page 6, you'll see a beautifully done project. This is on Shinnecock Bay. And on page 7, you'll see what happens when a storm hits that. It's simply that type of bioengineering does not have enough resilience to stand up to wave attack. And so it would just be completely wiped out in the first storm. And then the last item we looked at were geotextiles, and we give you an example of a geocube wall installed in East Hampton. These are allowed under the town code, but they have a very short lifetime, about 6 months, and then you have to, 6 months or a year? Not to exceed 6 months. And as I think that I mentioned before, and I'll just reiterate again, if, in bold letters, there was a community-based solution, this is something that takes about 2 years. And I speak from experience. We've done, I don't know, a half a dozen community-based projects in Southampton. And between the various permits that we have to get from the state and from the town, and not to mention the engineering that has to be done, and also getting all the property owners to agree, which, by the way, we haven't heard anything back on our proposal that was sent almost 2 months ago. It's going to take about 2 years. Well, we put in the geotextiles, and the town says you have to take them out in 6 months, or they're going to come on your property and do it, and that's actually written into the code. So our evaluation is that there are no true interim measures that are applicable on the site while we're waiting for a potential community-based solution that may or may not occur. And therefore, we are requesting that the board approve our rock revetment with the cobble beach on top of it, so that if the cobble beach actually works, you never see the rock revetment and it never comes into play. But if it doesn't work, which I don't think it will, then you have the protection of the rock revetment. And if all of the other property owners decide that they want to participate, then you have a compatible structure. So that's the result of our interim alternative analysis. The other item the board asked us to look at was another alternative with offshore breakwaters. So we're also very familiar with this project. We've built 8 of these rather, in Mauritius Bay in the last 5 years, and we helped Suffolk County design and build a structure like this in Indian Island County Park. So these are very effective. They're part of what we call a living shoreline, where you have an offshore breakwater, which will break the waves and create a quieter condition behind it. And by the addition of sand and vegetation, you can stabilize the shoreline because the wave energy is being broken offshore. These can be very effective. As I said, we've used them very successfully, but they come with a very large cost. And so we went through and evaluated that cost as applied to this site, and you're looking at about a $2 million project in order to build the types of structures that would work over this stretch of shoreline. And that compares to the cobble beach that we recommended, which was about half the price. So although we think it is, yeah, about, yeah. So whereas we believe it's a viable alternative, it's not really financially attainable. And we believe that a similar result can be obtained with the cobble beach. The last item that the board asked us to look at was examples of revetments that have already been built. And so what I did was I went through our archives and I pulled up a series of examples of revetments that are built throughout Southampton town. And what I did was I gave you a key map in the beginning showing you all the different locations, so you can see that there's some on Mauritius Bay, there's some on Shinnecock Bay. And then I highlighted each property so you could see each property. And then I showed you photos of what the revetment looks like during construction and after construction. As you know, you can see, for example, if you just go to page 5, which is on Shore Road, I mean, one of the big knocks on revetments is that if you put it in, you instantly lose the beach. It's terrible. The waves reflect off of it. It scours the beach, and you're done. And as you go through these photos, what you'll see is that it's not really the case. Look at Shore Road. This is a bayside beach. You can see there's a bulkhead in the background where there is no beach. But you can see that on this revetment, we recessed it back. And by doing that, we managed to stabilize a nice small beach in that area. That's very analogous to the situation where you have a series of bulkheaded properties to the north, right around the inlet, and our property is recessed back from that by the erosion. And so by following that line of erosion, we believe we can accomplish a similar result. The next one, which is also is on Shinnecock Bay, you can see it's a very similar situation. You have this bulkhead in the background where there is no beach, and then you have the rock revetment in the foreground where, yes, is it perfect? No, but there is a beach. And, that's evidenced by the seaweed line that you can see coming off there. Continuing on, we have, a couple other properties on Shinnecock Bay. This one's at the end of Squires. And again, you can see where the seaweed line is. So there is a dry beach in front of the rock revetment. This is, if you've been told that you put in a rock revetment and you lose the beach immediately, you can just look at these photos. That's just simply not the case. And every case is a little bit different. but the ones that I'm showing you, I think, are very analogous to the Tempesta case. Continuing on, there's just a whole series of examples. In this, the next one, which is also in Shinnecock Bay, we actually stabilized the tow with a core log, and you don't even see the revetment because it's underneath the sand. So in this particular case, but you can see in the next photo that, where the erosion has occurred. So the core logs were overtopped, and the sand that is on top of the rocks was displaced. And that was just, with a very small storm. If it's a large storm, we're going to lose the core logs, but retain the rocks below them. Similar, that's the, on the next, I think the next page, which is page 12, is that same site, just from a different direction. And you can just see in the lower photograph, the rocks are just slightly exposed. A little more, right there, see that? So, I have it here, example after example of, on Shinnecock Bay, in Shinnecock Hills, North Sea Beach Colony. This is a project that this board actually approved. This is on page 20. And you can see here, again, we have a situation, we have a bulkhead on one side, the shoreline has eroded back. We adopted the line of the shoreline of the eroded bluff, and you can see it maintains a sandy beach in front of it. And then we have, just on East Shore Drive, there's a number of structures on East Shore Drive. I think in total, and of course this is very close to this area, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different projects all together. Starting on page 21, you'll see the index, and then you can walk through these photos and you can see, yes, there is in fact a beach in front of each and every one of these. Then we go on to 3 projects in North Haven. Again, West Banks, Robertson Drive, and Forest Road, and all these situations, there still is a beach. And the final one is actually a project out in East Hampton on Louse Point. Again, the board wanted to see examples. One of the members said, have you done this before? Where have you done it? What does it look like? Well, yes, we've done it before. These are the locations. This is what it looks like.
Unless I missed some of the photos, I was unable to see any of the neighboring properties that did not have the revetments.
Well, in most of these cases, the neighboring properties are already bulkheaded, as you saw in the photos. And if you look in the ones on East Shore Drive, you should be able to see, well, in that case, the neighboring property has a concrete seawall. And you can't see those other properties. But what you can see is when you look at it, for example, if you look on page 24, you can see that, the line of the beach is pretty straight. On this top photo, you see the seaweed line. You have a pretty consistent width of beach across there. So it's not like the beach is eroding directly in front of the rock revetment and nowhere else. And there's a good reason for that. These are sloping porous walls that are specifically designed to decrease reflection and refraction and to dissipate wave energy by rolling up the slope and by going into the cavities between each piece of rock. This is not a solid seawall. This is a porous structure. So I thought, the board wanted to see examples, and I've shown you examples. I believe that you can just see for yourself that in many cases where we're operating next to an existing bulkhead, by adopting the natural curve that's resulted from the erosion, that we end up with a pretty good situation. The only other thing I will hand up this evening, and this is not new information because we did submit it to Marty. I apologize, Marty. This was only submitted to you today, but it's nothing new. I can just tell you that. This is a letter to the DEC, and part of the part of the conversation was that the board had reached out to the regional office of the DEC to talk about community-based projects. So in this letter, what we do is describe the process we've been going through with the board and the steps that we've taken on the, to effectuate a community-based process, and the changes that we've made in our project, which I just explained to you. So it's not any new information, but I thought in the interest of transparency, the board should see the communication that we send to the DEC, and so you can see for yourself, we're telling them the same thing we're telling you. So I don't really have anything additional to add. My objective, if you look at the timeline, my clients have been actively pursuing this for a year. This is our third public hearing. I think that we've been highly responsive and respectful to the board and to the neighbors in dutifully investigating each and every concern that was brought forward. But I think we're at the point where the board has sufficient information to make a decision.
It's the fourth public hearing, just that.
Oh, sorry about that.
Good evening, Marty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. Tonight I'll be presenting findings supporting denial of the requested wetland permit. Permit is, as you know, being requested for proposed expanded residential redevelopment, construction of a stone revetment with vinyl bulkhead returns with some supplemental cobble placed on the beach in front of the revetment. I'll share copies of the report with the board members and the applicant, and then I'll walk through this report. As indicated, the report is dated today, June 24th, 2026. I'd like to read this report into the record. Again, these are findings of my office supporting denial of a wetland permit for the subject property at 35 East Beach Drive in the hamlet of North Sea. Just to run through the findings. The first finding indicates that the proposed project is incompatible with the purposes and findings listed in section 325-1 and 325-2, as the construction and site disturbance would result in significant unmitigated loss of intertidal wetlands as a consequence of direct impact and conversion of subtidal wetlands, as well as undue adverse impacts to the quality of the wetlands and the adjacent areas. And no plan has been put forward in order to mitigate or offset this loss of wetlands as required by Chapter 325. The second finding expresses concerns regarding the impacts of revetment construction. It indicates that revetments interfere with beach morphology, including beach width, coastline shape, and beach volume. They interfere with hydrodynamics, and that is by causing increased rip currents, diffracted waves, disturbed littoral drift, and wave overtopping, putting inland structures at greater risk. Thirdly, it indicates that revetments interfere with natural flooding and drainage patterns by hindering incoming and receding tides within a FEMA-designated flood zone. It notes that revetments affect coastal ecology, that they impact beach accessibility by the public, inclusive of the public's right to pass and repass, and associated recommendation. It indicates that they cause impacts with regard to coastal resilience and the needed allowance for a landward shoreline retreat, and that they also affect natural wetland-dependent fish and wildlife habitats, and then goes on to list some of those habitats are affected, including benthic communities, aquatic macrofauna, foraging shorebirds and waterbirds, diamondback terrapin nesting, and hatchlings, breeding horseshoe crabs, and we do have evidence of horseshoe crab breeding at the Cobble Beach at the subject property. Critical juvenile fish, bay cobble nursery feeding, and shelter habitat is also adversely affected, particularly for species like Atlantic silverside, sticklebacks, and pipefish. Intertidal amphipods, mollusks, and worms, and beach and dune plants are also adversely affected. And then lastly, indicates that revetments affect beach quality and aesthetics due to visual obstruction and entrapment of garbage and debris. Thirdly, the report indicates that revetments impact the project site and neighboring coastal habitats and properties as a result of increased scour and erosion that occurs at the revetment toe, the frontal beach berm, and on adjacent neighboring properties, which tends to cause rapid lowering of the beach elevation, with resulting increased wave heights and potential undermining and future collapse of the revetment. Revetments can also cause heightened risk of structural damage. They interfere with the transport of valued beach sand off shore, as well as with needed upland beach sediment supply, and can cause the disappearance of beaches related to wave energy deflection off the near impermeable stone armor, also due to flanking along the proposed, in this case, vinyl bulkhead returns, and downdrift beach loss and change. Fourth, it's noted that the intended purpose and functionality of the proposed revetment at this property is put to question, as during significant coastal events, the revetment will be wave and water over top. Fifth, it indicates that any commitment to repeated sand replenishment, revetment burial, planting, and dune creation on part of the applicant will require costly maintenance and repairs, and therefore cannot reasonably be required nor guaranteed. Six, the report indicates that the applicant is yet proposing to construct a revetment rather than offer nature-based solutions. The action needs to be reclassified as an unlisted action, thereby requiring a secret determination and analysis of both site-specific and potential cumulative environmental impacts resulting from an anticipated domino effect of expected successive new applications for wetland permitting of shore hardening and downdrift properties and along currently Almond Beach if the proposed revetment is approved. 7, the report indicates that the maximum practicable buffer zones as required by Chapter 325 have not been proposed. 8, it's noted that all reasonable mitigation measures have not been taken to minimize alteration or impairment of the wetland, nor to reduce adverse impacts to the wetlands to the maximum extent practicable, as also required by Chapter 325. 9, it's noted that as required by Section 325-9D, subsection 3, the applicant needs to demonstrate, quote, that the proposed work and location would have less adverse environmental impact than any practicable alternative, end of quote. I don't believe that the applicant has met this wetland permit issuance test. Number 10, cites Section 325-3 definitions, which indicates, quote, that the purpose of evaluating practicable alternatives shall be to locate activities so that impacts to the wetland are avoided to the maximum extent practicable. The practicable alternative analysis may reduce the scale of the activity consistent with the project purpose, proposed use, and permit issuance standards set forth in Chapter 325, end of quote. In this regard, the house size can yet be reduced and shifted further landward. And as this board is aware, the applicant has decided against reducing the footprint of the proposed new structures. Number 11 indicates that flood proofing and elevation of the new home and deck, together with periodic Suffolk County Department of Public Works renourishment of the beach with dredged material, as well as the recommended deposition and naturalized mounding or berming of supplemental Bay Beach compatible cobble, will provide sufficient protection for the new residents against flood risk, thereby negating the need for a revetment. 12, it's noted that the project plans would significantly increase the degree of wetland site nonconformity, as 1,354 square feet of house and 517 square feet of deck would be demolished and replaced with larger structures, in that the new house would have a footprint of 1,674 square feet, as well as 800 square feet of deck at non-conforming wetland construction setbacks, and again, as compared to current conditions. 13, I take the position that the applicant has not demonstrated as required by sections 325-9D, 4, subsection B, and 325-9D, 4, subsection D, that, quote, the proposed work and location will not impair the capacity of the wetland and the wetland buffer to provide essential wildlife habitat characteristics, including, among others, food, shelter, breeding, cover, screening, and migratory habitat, as well as essential corridors and connective functions, end of quote, and that, quote, mitigative measures shall be implemented that contribute to the protection and enhancement of wetlands and wetland benefits, end of quote. I don't believe the applicant has met this test. 14, as permitted pursuant to section 325-14, quote, where on-site wetlands restoration and creation may be unfeasible due to technical or other constraints, other mitigative measures such as off-site restoration or creation may be required by this board. However, so far, no off-site mitigation has been proposed by the applicant to compensate for the less construction and buffer setbacks which are being sought, as well as for the adverse impacts of revetment and vinyl bulkhead return construction. And lastly, the applicant, the report simply takes the position that the applicant has failed to demonstrate that the proposed use is the most appropriate approach to protecting the coastline and that it is compatible with wetlands protection. So, essentially, Chapter 325 is very clear about advising this board and the town that a wetland permit cannot be issued when it will result in unmitigated wetland loss as expressed by this report. And as indicated, while the applicant has gone through to considerable length to impress upon the board why revetment is being proposed at this location, recognizing the wetland and environmental impacts of shore hardening on a beach where none of the downdrift properties are currently revetted or bulkheading. The applicant has yet to come forward with wetland impact mitigation plan as required by the code. Thank you.
Aaron, do you want to have any response?
Yes, please. Aram Tertunian, First Coastal, on behalf of the applicant. It's like Marty and I are looking at different projects. Marty couched these as findings. I find them more to be opinions. Marty, and I'd like the opportunity to respond to this formally, since I only received it this evening. But Marty's memo is talking about things in generalities. Revetments do this, revetments do that. What we're presenting to you are facts. We're giving you engineering reports produced by professional engineers. I've shown you, I think conclusively, convincingly, I hope, that you can pump sand in front of these houses, every 6 months if you want. It's just not going to stay there because it's too energetic an environment. I think that we have met all of the standards under the code. I think we've done it verbally at these hearings. I think we've done it in writing over and over again. Quite frankly, I don't actually understand what wetland impacts Marty's referencing. There's a gravel beach there now. When this project is complete, there will be a gravel and cobble beach there. We're not talking about filling vegetated wetlands. We're talking about a gravelly a beach that extends into the water where there's more gravel. At the end of this project, you're going to have the same thing. So where's the impact? I don't see where the impact is. If the situation doesn't change, there can't be an impact. As I've shown you in, more than a dozen examples of using this type of structure in a similar situation where you have a hard structure on one side and you're recessed back, you have a beach in front of it and you have the right to pass and repass. I won't get into aesthetics because beauty is in the eye of the beholder. We have investigated every possible alternative, regardless of its, and shown, demonstrated that what will work and what won't work based upon established standards. All I'm seeing in this memorandum is a different opinion. Basically, if you build a revetment, you're going to lose the beach and you're going to change the subtidal environment. I just don't see it. You look at the examples that I've given you. It simply doesn't happen that way. So I think that And I think I'll just leave it there for now, and like I said, I'll prepare a formal response and go through this one at a time, and I'll go through the proof of 325-9 again. And as far as mitigation goes, I think we've done a really good job at mitigation, on-site. Number one, remember that the house is going to be 15 feet from the shoreline. We can't move it any farther landward. If we could, we would. We can't. You got to put in a sanitary system, and it takes up X amount of room. Everything is back designed off the sanitary system, and it's the minimum size sanitary system you're allowed to build in Suffolk County. You can't do anything less. So that's how we located the home. Buffer zone, we'll give whatever land is available for a buffer zone, the 15 feet between the house and the water, we'll make it a buffer zone. There's nowhere else on the property to give one. Off-site mitigation, yeah, we're open to that. Nobody's mentioned it before. I don't have any ideas in the last 15 minutes, but if there is some suitable off-site mitigation, I think my client would be very interested in doing that. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Aaron. We are not open to the public yet. I'll alert you when the public will be invited to speak. We've heard, as you've indicated, differing testimony. It is a very complicated, complex, difficult project. And one of the challenges is how can the impacts of a hardened structure such as a rock revetment be mitigated to not have impacts downstream? The testimony is that the rock revetment will be essentially buried, there'll be cobble above it, and they will not be seen unless there's sufficient storm damage to move the cobble around so that it is seen. If it is not seen, then the cobble beach is sufficient. Aaron, you've indicated that you don't think it is sufficient, so that essentially you're saying the protection of the dwelling will be not the cobble, but the rock revetment. There is a wealth of data that suggests that a rock revetment, rather than absorbing wave energy, redirects it and causes damage downstream. That's a very, very high concern of this board, to the point that I have not heard testimony that would indicate that there will not be damage downstream given enough time and wave energy, or time and storms and natural occurring processes to when the cobble gets moved around. So the cobble becomes a temporary, if you will. It could be a year or two, it could be 10 years, it could be 20 years, who knows? It depends on what the weather conditions are. So this is the domino, the testimony really started, 50 years ago, whenever that channel was built into Willie Pond. And I just picture over the years, erosion happening, sometimes visible, sometimes not visible, because what happens when there's a storm and sand is moved from under the waves that we don't see to then make the shoreline, not the shoreline, under the water near the shore deeper, so that next time it gets to be bigger waves and causes more erosion. And then we get a Band-Aid because the county dredges and throws some sand in there. We think, now we've solved the problem. Well, we haven't, and it's gotten worse. And whether the storms are getting worse, whether the sea level has risen so there's more waves, I don't know. In a sense, it probably, maybe it doesn't matter. But we do know it's getting worse. So there was a testimony here that the last dredging lasted, I think Judy said a couple of meetings ago, mostly was going in 7 months. So you can put this cobble here. If we were to give you an approval for the rock revetment, which I don't see happening, and then the county dredges and put some sand on there, it's gonna stick around for a little while and then disappear, because you've offered testimony, and the evidence has been clear as day to me that sand is insufficient aggregate size to withstand the turbulence of the water, of the waves, when there's a storm, and it's gonna move. So my thinking is, if we were to approve a rock revetment on this property, it very well could protect your client's house for a period of time until we get that humdinger of a storm, when even that is insufficient. But I think it's clear as day that that rock revetment at some point will take the next house, or the beach in front of the next house. And then they'll be in here for something, and then the next house. And it'll go right down the line. The most encouraging thing I see here is that everybody, including me, has a certain fear about what's going on here, because the elements shall prevail. They're real, and it's coming. What are we gonna do with it? And there are so many people gathered here that have so much concern. And the best case scenario that I see is that we come together on the same team to do something big that actually leads us toward fixing the problem, instead of doing piecemeal, feeling like we fixed the problem. In reality, we're putting a Band-Aid on it that's gonna come off. That's gonna take, well, Aaron, you're probably more experienced than anybody else in the room on all these things. I've done some research to try to get myself up to speed on it. I'm way short of being a professional on this. I know enough just to have some ideas, which can be dangerous, which is why I don't want to go too far on this. But I do believe there is a solution if we pull together and work towards a solution. I don't think this board has the authority to grant permission for that solution, because I think that solution lies under the water, in what, I guess to be politically correct, would say some people think is state jurisdiction, other people might consider it town jurisdiction. I don't know whose jurisdiction it is, but I know that I feel absolutely confident that the problem is less about the beach and more about the speed of that water, and the solution lies more in the water than on the beach. Now, how can we make that happen? I don't have the answers. And the last thing I want to do is be part of the team that grants approval for a rock revetment that's going to damage the neighbor's house or the neighbor's beach, because that's just one more domino falling. And then in 5 years, we'll be back here in the exact same spot with a bigger problem, with more erosion and and fewer solutions and more expense. I didn't really want to sound so depressing, but I do believe that this is a huge, huge problem, and I don't think your preferred solution is really the solution we need to go with. I'm not opposed to putting cobble in front of your client's house. I think that is probably the best solution we have to do a temporary fix to get by, but I don't think it's permanent, and I don't even think the rock revetment is permanent. And I think the permanency lies offshore. I was brought up where the first question that was asked is, what does it cost? Now I've learned that that's often not the best way to start. I like asking the question, what is the most effective way to solve the problem? And then consider the finances. And if there's not enough money in this room to do the finances, maybe there's some money somewhere else. But I do believe it's something that should be addressed because it's good for the health of the town. It's good for the safety of that beach and the beach farther down. I think it's high time somebody got aboard and did something. And we need some good leadership on that. I don't think at this stage, money is a barrier. I'm not saying it's cheap, and it may be a barrier at some point. But I think what we need is a real solution. Those are my thoughts, and yet we have an application here. I'm not opposed to approving an application to put a house there and to put a cobble beach there. I am opposed to doing anything that will lead to damaging neighbors' properties that's not mitigated. That's something I don't want to be part of. Aaron?
Aram Tertunian, First Coastal, on behalf of the applicant agrees, and they will do a cobble.
If you will approve our home plans and the
You have to be heard by
today.
the mic, I'm sorry, you can't speak there.
If you will approve the house as proposed, and we can do cobble at the biggest size permitted under the planning, and you approve it today so that we could proceed, we'll accept it. But if we have to go through this for another year, we're just gonna end up in court, and I don't think anybody wants to do that.
No, I believe court is a waste of time and energy that should be focused in doing something constructive. So you said a bunch of things there that I want fleshed out so that I can understand just what you're saying.
So we've heard about the size of the house, people have complained. We want to go with the size of the house that we proposed. We're going to raise it sufficiently in compliance with all of the required regulations and laws. We want the next step for us to be to go to zoning for the house that we want. We also want to go with the cobble beach that Aram has proposed. And cobble, he has provided you with evidence of what sizes are appropriate. And we want to go with the largest size that is permissible and as called cobble. So if we're able to get approval to do those things, hopefully we can stop seeing each other. And we are willing to work with the town, with the community. So far, all we've heard is opposition. We've not heard from our neighbors that they want to work together, but we will try.
The latest proposal that I've seen is a rock revetment. Are you suggesting that the cobble would be there alone?
If you will approve a cobble berm beach, we will go with that plan. But at this point, we have invested time and energy and resources and emotional hardship at this point. We're not going to go 9 more times to the engineers to have them draw up more plans. We will agree in principle to do a cobble berm beach, is that what it's called? And to do the house that we proposed without making it smaller, if you will agree to approve that so that we can move forward. And we will try to work on a bigger plan separately. But at this point, we're trying to protect our property. And if the cobble is the only thing, because last time, frankly, we thought we were getting a little close. But what I'm hearing you say is just no to a revetment. That's what I'm hearing. So I don't want to come back here again and again over the course of another year when we're just going to hear that same message.
Okay,
Point of honor, Chairman?
One moment, you
Wait,
can't be
wait.
heard from there, you have to come to the mic. Do not speak from there, please. Microphone only.
Anderson Rules of Order just simply says that when you make a point, and the only point I make is to hear from the public first before decisions are made. That's it.
I don't know if the mic picked up any of that, but that's
The-
okay.
just so the public understands, this is a public hearing where we're gathering information. We are not going to vote on an approval or denial on this application tonight. And at the end of tonight, there will be no vote. We're gathering information. This is still fluid, and we're hearing things, and we're sorting things out here. When we get to the place where we feel comfortable that we've heard nearly enough information, if I dare say that, we'll open up to the public to offer more information that might help us make a better decision. But we want to work through these issues first, before we get involved with the public.
So we've shown you a lot of evidence, and I want to echo what Aram said, which is the report provided by Marty today is conclusory. It doesn't actually address the evidence that we presented, the alternatives that we presented. And Aram has said that he doesn't believe cobble alone is going to be a long-term solution. But if the long-term solution we're proposing is being rejected, I think the next best thing right now is probably going to be the cobble if we want to protect the property. That's what we're trying to do. You may recall we showed you.
I agree with that. I agree with what you're saying, because I don't want to come back here. It would be
You
nice
have to come back.
It would be nice. I mean, I would miss you, but I think, there's just so many times we can say the same things over and over again. And you've been gracious in doing a lot of research, a lot of engineering. I'm sure it costs time and money and emotional stress. Thank you for that. And that was very gracious of you, but there's a huge problem here. And we don't want to go 2 steps forward and 1 step back. So I know there's been some talk about reducing the size of the house. In my thinking, I don't see the size of the house as being primary. Primary is those big waves coming in on a storm. I need to get some help from others on the size of the house. But I do like very much what you're saying about a cobble beach, standalone cobble beach. I believe that will do, if we have reasonable expectations of history to repeat itself, that will last for a while here. And it would probably last for a lot longer if other neighbors did it also.
I agree. And if I could comment briefly on the size of the home. As Aram said, I just want to stress, we are willing to really do anything to comply with pertinent regulations and laws, raising the home, moving the septic to the front of the home, everything that will help if there is a situation where there is a flood. So we are willing to do all of those things. Truly, I don't think the size of the house should be an issue if we are doing all of those things to make sure that we are complying with all of these regulations, moving the septic to the front, and doing everything else that we're offering to do here.
Good. And in my thinking, if I lived there, I think raising the house is the single most important thing there. To at least have something there in case, who knows what's going to happen out there.
And to be clear, we are happy to do that.
Okay. I need some help on size of the house. How does it relate to chapter 325? I know, Marty, you suggested reducing the size of the house. I don't know what the board members see. I would love some input.
I'm not that concerned about the size of the house. I'm more concerned about not having a revetment and having the cobble beach. And I could go along with that, the compromise. I think that the applicant feels that they're giving up a lot. I don't have a problem at this point with the size of the house. I agree with you that I think the real problem is what is happening out there in the water, and that bigger problem has to be addressed. So this would be something temporary, and hopefully people would come together and work for a real solution along that strip of land, beach.
My personal conviction after talking to Rob Marsh is that if we as the community, came up with a plan that had validity, that professionals thought it had a very high chance of success, even though it's in the water and it's, what's that term, presumptively incompatible, that is not the same, Rob told me, as not approvable. That just means you gotta push a little harder to get an approval, maybe show more things. But it is doable. I mean, they would consider approving something out there, but it needs to be the right thing. So I'm guardedly optimistic, but I know it's a big project, it's bigger than me, and bigger than this board. But I am guardedly optimistic. Let's talk more about the size of the house. Is there any more comments?
No, I was gonna say.
I'm good.
Ann took my thunder, but I was gonna agree with that.
You ashamed yourself.
No, he asked me first.
Thank you. I'm about to open up to public comment unless you have more to say.
Just very, very minor, you know, Cobble Beach berm design is highly technical. And I would like this board to approve what the engineers design.
What do you mean highly technical?
The sizing of the rock and the thickness of the layer of rock, there's multiple layers of rock, so you have smaller rock on the bottom and larger, you know, it goes like 4 to 6 inches, a couple of feet thick, and then you have, you know, 8 to 14 inches, a couple of feet thick, and they're overlaying each other and up to a particular elevation. So
Okay.
that is a critically important part of the design process.
Okay, just so you know, I'm not particularly technical. So let's put this together. What I'm picturing in my mind when we say Cobble Beach is something that is called, I believe the terminology is a dynamic shoreline, where there's a bunch of stones there of whatever size, whatever the engineers say, they know more than I do about that. But the idea is, when the wave hits that, they might move around a little bit. They're gonna absorb some energy. That's the point of that.
Yep.
And they may even move to the neighbor's house a little bit, not house, but shoreline. And it may need to be enhanced over some time, another year or 5 years, or 10, whatever it is, which probably can be done with an administrative permit.
And, you know, what you've described is precisely correct. And there's a dimensionless number called N, when N equals 3, and it's based on wave height and wave period and the slope of the shoreline. And that's what we're aiming for, is when N equals 3. That is where the shoreline is mostly stable, but moves around a little bit. And that's the design that we're going to put forward. We've worked with the engineers on other projects. One of them is the approved revocable trust, where we've gone through a very deliberate and exhaustive design analysis to come up with what we believe will work.
Okay, I just want to pull things together, summarize here before I open to the public. This is my understanding, the board, you can chime in too if you see something that should be added. We're looking now at a project where there's a house, is it a new house being built or brand new house being built? This comes down and a new house is being built. And it's gonna be up on pilings, it's gonna be moved back as far as it can, be directed, conditioned by all the millions of laws that regulate where it has to go and what everything has to be there. So it's gonna be about in the same place where it is, probably, maybe a little bit different. And then the shore will be cobble of some size that Aram says will be designed. There'll be no rock revetment. And that cobble will be designed to last a reasonable amount of time. But we don't know what the weather's gonna be, and we don't know what the storms are gonna be. So those are the unknowns. Those are the risks the homeowner has to take. And you folks, as homeowners, will share some of that risk being downstream and upstream. And this is temporary. I just see it as temporary. Doing too good a job makes us think that the temporary is a permanent solution, but it's not. there really needs to be something out in that water to slow that water down. I did some research to find out what the speed of that water is, and the speed of that water is actually known when it's calm and also when it's a nor'easter blowing 40 miles an hour. And the speed of that water is so great in a storm that it will rip apart a biolog. They will not last. Aram said they wouldn't last. I didn't tell him this, but I wasn't sure he was right. Now I believe he is right. That water is ferocious, and it's gotten worse. And that needs to be addressed, and that's a big project. So with that background, if there's someone here that would like to speak, I invite you to speak. Raise your hands so we can do this orderly. What the board is looking for is not a vote of support or lack of support. We're not looking for the popularity contest here. We're looking for something that will be compatible with Chapter 325, essentially legal, but also reasonable and practicable. And if you can offer something that has not been said, if it's already been said, we don't need to hear it again. It's wasting all of our time. But if you can offer something that has not been said, the board would like to hear that. Sir.
Greetings. I'm Tim Mahoney. I'm a neighbor of the Tempestas. I was curious as to how far that cobble beach is going to be across. Is it going to be just in front of the Tempestas property? Or is it going to be extended, as Aram said, if you get 1,100 feet, it's much more effective?
It is effective. Here's the problem. We live in a land of laws. They have authority in front of their property, not in front of your property. So they're gonna do it in front of their property. But if you wanna do it in front of your property and some of the neighbors do too, it would require an application from this board. And quite frankly, we've heard all the comments. They've done all the research. I don't see it taking long to get an approval for that. But once again, a cobble beach across that whole front will last a lot longer than just one, but it's still, I would characterize as a temporary.
I agree 100%. The question is, what's it going to cost per home to make that temporary cobble beach last as long as possibly? Nothing's been brought up about.
Aram knows engineers. We have to rely on the science.
Well, I just like to have it, because my mom has a house right next door. And, if you're
not
protecting
our
one
field.
beach, you might as well protect them all.
Unfortunately.
And what's it going to cost, per house? That's a pretty simple question. Thank you.
I think it'd be wonderful if you would to give Aram a call during his business hours and have a conversation with him. He could probably say a whole lot more than what he can say here. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in this application?
These walkers and wheelchairs, I think it's a GIB convention. Good evening. My name is Michael Michelle. I'm a landscape architect. For some 40 years, my office is in Glen Cove, New York. I did work with Chuck Hamilton in the preparation of the report, which has been submitted to the board. However, the comments I'd like to make are unrelated to that, but related to the comment that your request that you made, whether there's some other application that could be, something that could be done along that entire shoreline that would affect all of them. If in fact you did go with a cobble and it was extended throughout that entire down drift from the bulkhead of the house that's there, and then heavily vegetated. In addition to the revetment that we're talking about, there's the entire environment and habitat that's there. The revetment may, I'm not going to comment right now since it's not my discussion, how good the revetment is or isn't, but the one thing the revetment will do, it will impact the ecology of that area, and of course, the habitats that are there right now, that I think Mr. Shea has mentioned. All those are active. Mr. Hamilton, when he wrote this report, He walked the site extensively and thoroughly, so what is mentioned, that Mr. Shea mentioned, in fact, is in his report. And in fact, he witnessed and saw those things there, that habitat that is established. My concern and his worry, as a landscape architect who's worked on many seashore projects, is that we're going to impact the entire habitat that is there, not only on the client's home residence, but all those that are there, because all of them will be affected by the subsequent wave action. We can talk about that's another story, but all of them will be affected by the wave action that happens thereafter, the loss of shoreline, loss of intercoastal zone, the beach itself. So now we have a revetment that works, but we have a habitat that's been destroyed. What would work short-term, I don't know that there's a long-term solution. I've always said my property, for all the properties that we've worked on on the shoreline, is that we may own the land, but God is in charge. I mean, we get whatever they leave us. Mother Nature does what she does. So the cobble core along the perimeter, the borderline properties, would significantly help if they were put in place along that south, that entire strip, but also if it were planted with vegetation, heavily vegetated. Therefore, not only will we maintain the existing vegetation, maintain as much of the shoreline and subsurface as we can, but also we'll maintain the existing habitat, which is there, which is really what all of us have bought into when you buy one of those shoreline properties. It's not only the beach that's there, but it's also the habitat. I've been on the North Sea property, my client's property. It's everything around that whole property that makes the property unique and fun to be with. So I would agree that there is no, in my opinion, no long-term solution, but there is a shorter-term solution. But I do agree that the more residents that joined in that short-term solution of using the cobble, they should be heavily planted to maintain the beach line, but also the habitat that they all share along that edge. And thank you.
I actually think it'd be wonderful if some of you neighbors were to get together and do something together and talk to Marty about, and Aaron, and whoever you want to, but there is a lot of knowledge right here, a lot of experience that can design things that can make that beach more stable and more ecologically beneficial, more than what we can do tonight. Is there someone else who would like to speak in this application?
John Petrello, 31 East Beach Drive, Southampton. I think we're making progress. I think we are making progress. Finally, we have eliminated the possibility of a rock revetment on the beach, and I applaud that wholeheartedly. To answer Mr. Mahoney's question, the cost per house, from the quotes that Aaron has provided, is
I'm sorry, could you face us? The microphone will pick
It's
you up.
approximately $144,000 per household. If I'm incorrect, please correct me, but I think that's pretty close from what you've estimated. One or two points that I would like to make. One of the worries that I have is that this rock revetment that may be proposed may end up looking more like a rock revetment than a cobble beach. I'm sorry, the cobble beach that they're proposing may end up with stones that are larger and larger and larger and less mobile. So I think we have to be aware of slipping in something that seems closer to a revetment than a cobble beach. So I think that's something we should all be watching very carefully. Another point that I would like to make is one of the concerns that the present owners of 35 East Beach Drive made was that the terrible changes that have been happening since they bought their house have necessitated them to request first a rock revetment and now something else. I don't know if you're able to show up the visuals that I provided today. On these, we can clearly see two different dates. The one is 2022, and the other one is 2025. 2022 is the year that the house at 35 East Beach Drive was purchased. In that aerial view, we can see the house, we can see the deck, we can see the high tide water line. And then 3 years later, when the owners requested a rock revetment that would have destroyed the beach for sure, as we all know now, we can see the house, the deck, and again, the high tide watermark. I would like you to look and see, do you see a difference? I don't think there's been a tremendous erosion in that period of time, which means that when the property was purchased, the owners knew what they were buying. And they were buying a property that does not support a large house. It does support the present house, or it does support, hopefully, a house of the same footprint with 2 stories that's all raised up high. But what they're requesting is a house much larger than even that house would be. There are offsets that I was forced to build with, that my brother was forced to build with, and I think those offsets should be respected in approving any house in the future. So once again, congratulations to the board, congratulations to the Tempestus for making the necessary changes in their plans that move us along to hopefully a house that we can all celebrate on their property in the future.
One question, you have a picture of the 2022
Yes,
photo.
there's both there. Would you show both,
Could,
please?
could you tell me if that photo was taken before or after the dredging that happened in 2022?
Yes, the 2022 was taken before the dredging. Okay, then the dredging put a lot of sand in front of it. Then over a period of time, whether it's 6 months, a year, or 2 years, that pretty much came back to where it was before. No worse, maybe even a little bit better, but it's certainly no worse. So the house is not in imminent danger. We are not forced to save their property by approving something that's not approvable. But by all means, we have our standards, we've all lived by those standards. They've served the community well, and I think we should maintain them. Again,
Thank you.
kudos to the board for doing such a great job. Appreciate it.
Is there someone, yes, ma'am?
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Carolyn Zank. I'm an attorney at law for 35 years, certified in ocean and coastal law, certified in environment and natural resources law. I'm the former general counsel with the group for the East End, and I'm a former town official of the great town of Southampton. I was on the council, actually, when this law was passed and contributed to trying to make it stronger. First I want to commend the chairman for a lot of wise words this evening. Thank you so much. And I want to commend Marty Shea, who's a gem to this town. He's unbelievable, one-man tour de force. And I want to commend the property owner for being flexible and everybody trying to work together at Aram. I think that's commendable, and hopefully we can, get somewhere good. I would note that if there's, Aram was talking about if there's this cobblestone beach, one picture is, sand and some rocks, but then there's some talk of like a lot of buried rocks again. So I think the main thing here is you need a flexible beach, if you will, as the chairman observed, and not another hard stabilizing structure. Because there's been a threat of litigation this evening, it's important to build the record, and I do have good credentials to help the board should they decide against a rock revetment, so I would like to go forward with the actual proposal as it appeared in the public hearing notice. So I'll just make a few comments on Aram's material. I guess the main thing, if you saw the picture before of the house, that the house is close to the sea and it's one story. But the application itself is calling for the house to be set way back and to go up on the piling. So that in itself is a very large mitigation measure, and that in itself is going to bring a lot less danger to the property owner. So it's not an imminent danger, as my client has said, who I represent, Mr. John Petrillo. And the reason it's not an imminent danger is probably because of the dredging of Woolly Pond, which is put to the north of the Tempesta property and comes down the coast. Aaron made some comments about, well, these bulkheads, they're all, they don't always destroy the beach. And it's true that when a beach is accreting or growing, and you have a bulkhead back far enough, then it wouldn't destroy the beach. If the beach is stable and it's way back, it wouldn't destroy the beach. But where the beach is eroding, it can destroy the beach and will destroy the beach. And it's been admitted that this area is eroding, but for the sand taken from Woolly Pond, replenishing it all the time. And that is the point. There are admissions in the record itself about what's caused the problem in the first place, like what's caused this problem. So when you look at an April 29, 2025 First Coastal at page 2, there's a quote, "The dramatic rate of erosion is the direct result of the total littoral blockage of littoral transport by the Woolly Pond inlet." So Woolly Pond was shore hardened. You don't get the sand that you need. The hardening causes a problem. Gee, what's our solution? More hardening. In a letter dated May 13, 2026 from First Coastal to the Conservation Board, the applicant's expert admits again, in 2023, the owners of the neighboring properties to the north, located at 39 and 41 East Beach Drive, applied for rock revetments to protect their properties from the extensive and long-standing.
Carolyn, may I interrupt you?
Yes.
Rather than go back and repeat what's in the record,
Well, this is highlighting what's in the record, and it's critical.
we don't need to highlight it, it's there.
Not-
Highlighting it, underlining it, capitalizing it, doesn't change the fact that it's there, we have that information, we're looking for new information.
Okay. I'll just mention one sentence to accommodate you. There's an admission, "The stabilizing and armoring of the inlet is the proximate cause of the chronic dramatic erosion at the Tempesta and the neighboring properties." So there's admission by the applicant in the record that it's shore hardening problem, structures that have caused the problem, and now there was a proposal for a shore hardening structure. On the new proposal, sight unseen, it would be a new action, and it would have to be evaluated in a new application for an action. Doesn't mean that all this work is for naught, but it means that you really have to see what's going on. Again, if it's just some rocks on the beach, it's one thing, or a cobblestones on the beach, but if it might be buried 10 feet of rocks that cause the same problem of beach loss, so there would need to be an application. Aaron mentioned that sand disappears. It's true that sand disappears, but there's a big difference. When sand is put on a parcel and it disappears, it goes into the sand budget offshore, or it goes down drift to other property owners. And they have the right to the sand that's eroding and going down drift. So just because something disappears doesn't mean it didn't work per se, because you're still helping the downshore property owners. The first point I'd like to make, which is really important, is that the application is incomplete at this time, and I appreciate Marty Shea's comment. He recognized that the action has to be typed under the State Environmental Quality Review Act. Right now, the public hearing notice says that it's type 2. The problem with that appearing in the record is that type 2 means no problem here. There's absolutely, as a matter of law, no impact on the environment. So the action has to be retyped. If any kind of shore hardening structure is included, or even this Pebble Beach, it would be an unlisted action.
As I introduced you, we are not looking at a shore hardening structure. I announced before the public was open to comment where we are right now. That's where we are right now. Let's move forward. And you're going back.
Yes, again, I am simply protecting the record in case there is litigation, and
That's already in the record.
okay. Well, the point I would make on even the cobblestone beach is one would have to apply for that and see the engineering plans and see what it is. Again, you don't want to have this type 2 action on either the cobblestone beach or the rock revetments or any of this. The board needs to make a determination as a matter of law. This is a legal requirement. And Marty will be able to explain that to the board more later. On the rock revetment, the law says that that's a structure by law, and by law it has to be back 100 feet. As has been observed, there wasn't enough before tonight talk about alternatives, and so the burden of proof is on the applicant to prove that there are practical alternatives consistent with the wetland law, and hopefully he can do that into the future, but from the record that I had seen, it hadn't been done yet, so it would just have to be denied as a matter of law. I agree with everything that's in the Chuck Hamilton report. I won't repeat it. I commend it to your reading, but I support it. The practicable alternatives that Chuck Hamilton has suggested, that I'm also suggesting, include some that are already in the record. Move the house away from the bay. Continue with the sand nourishment from Woolly Pond, maybe make it more frequent. Put the house on pilings, that's already part of the application. Retain the current beach vegetation. Right now, the application calls for ripping out the beach vegetation there, and I'll show you some pictures in a moment. There's Phragmites on the property, there's some trees on the property, there's some established vegetation. The Phragmites has rhizomes that will help, the roots help to hold the land together. So ripping out the vegetation, and this expert also talked about preserving the ecosystem, should not take place. That should not be part of the project. As far as the size of the house, I will note that the applicant has imposed some hardships on itself by making his house bigger. It's important to note that the house that exists now is 1 story. The footprint of the new house has gotten bigger. I don't have the exact numbers here, but they're proposing a 2nd story. So just if you keep the same footprint, the homeowner will have double the amount of living area, which is something to be remembered. Right now, there is a deck proposed pretty close to the rock revetment, right behind it. There's another deck in the area, and I'll show you a picture in a minute, that is now blocking the public way. Putting the deck that close to the water is probably a bad idea and dangerous. If you move the house back, you put it on pilings, you put a balcony up on the 2nd floor, it'll be beautiful. You'll have more protection, your deck won't be washed away. This is a really critical point, and I'm hoping that actually, I think the chairman was very wise to say that you need a more comprehensive solution here. Usually when I was a councilwoman in town, or in council with a group of South Fork, we proposed that there be a study for the Bay Area and to find a comprehensive solution. I know you're hearing this testimony a lot about these different shore hardening structures, but what is the comprehensive solution going to be? So an answer to that would be a generic environmental, a study, and then a generic environmental impact statement to see what could be done. One of the most important points that probably hasn't been made yet, and as an ocean and coastal lawyer who earned that certificate from the University of Oregon School of Law, is that downdrift properties have the right to the sand, updrift of them. Let me repeat that. Downdrift properties have the legal right to the sand, updrift of them. So when a bulkhead is put in and someone grabs extra lawn, when a rock revetment is put in and begins to stick out into the water and grab sand on its updrift side, these structures all grab sand. They grab land that should not have been the property owners. The law is that as the land erodes, they literally, property inland has a steady property lines, but property on the coast, as it erodes, you actually, as a matter of law, have less property. What's interesting is if you're downdrift and your property accretes or grows, you actually, the size of your property changes. It gets larger. This is an ocean and coastal law principle that I don't think has been factored into the thinking enough of the town. I would go so far as to say that it would be negligent to interrupt the literal drift of sand that a lot of these downdrift properties have. So I believe it's negligence, actually, and I believe it's a taking under the United States Constitution. If you take someone's land that they should have gotten, it's unconstitutional. I do have a report today, and it's going to constitute a notice of claim, which may not be necessary now, because it sounds like maybe we're away from shore hardening structures. and it won't be needed. But a notice of claim basically says, if anything happens to these property owners, the town of Southampton is liable. What's interesting about an applicant bringing litigation against the board would simply, it would be remanded. Do something differently, they'll send it back. But in a taking claim or a negligence claim, the town of Southampton could be liable for a tremendous amount of money. So putting these structures in is just a bad idea. Chuck Hamilton makes this point, and I'll make it too, and it breaks my heart as I go around the town as an ocean and coastal lawyer, and I see how this principle has been so violated. In the law in New York is that the public owns under saltwater lands. The public owns up to mean high tide. The public has the rights to a public trust doctrine, which is older than the Constitution itself. What does it give you? It gives you a quality of life in Southampton that can't be beat. Because you can go around to most of the bays and to the ocean, and you can take a beach walk. And when you ask people in life, like, what's one of your favorite things? It's always a beach walk. As I go around this town, I see that the principles of ocean and coastal law have been violated again and again and again. In the northern area, which I'll show you again, you can't walk. It's like contraptions all over the place. So the public trust doctrine basically, if you think of a beach and you think of the mean high tide mark with the seaweed line, as the water comes in and the land is eroded, the public said this is a shore hardening structure, and that's the water. And that's mean high tide. This would be public trust doctrine land. If the land erodes without anything in the way.
Would you keep your comments concerning this application?
This has everything to do with this application, my chairman, because it's, if there's a shore hardening, I'm going to explain it, and you'll see how it relates. So the public trust doctrine goes out from the water to mean high tide.
Your client is trying to get your attention.
I know. As it moves inland, it keeps its width. The public trust doctrine is lost when you hit the shore hardening structure. So you.
Carolyn, I don't think we need to take your time anymore, please.
Well, let me wrap up then. But this rock revetment would steal the public trust doctrine land. And so it is directly relevant to this application, because what would happen is the public would be forced into the water rather than enjoying the public trust lands up on the beach. Chuck Hamilton agrees. I'm going to be putting my written report into the board. It has photographs in it. I commend it to you.
Owned by the state.
My recommendation to you would be to do a conditional negative declaration, which basically says no impact statement will have to be prepared if you do these conditions. I'm going to just put some pictures up to give you an idea of the situation here. And I'll ask, what's your name, ma'am? Karina. Karina? Karina was so kind to scan these for me. So if you could put those up quickly, I'd appreciate it. Number one. Okay, so we have, to the north, we have Woolly Pond, and to the south, we have the North Sea, Northwest Harbor. And you can see in red, we have the property at issue. Next one, please. Again, you see the harbor to the southwest and Woolly Pond to the northeast. So you really have, what people have been talking about is a domino effect that's beginning to take place from the north down to the south. So there's more at stake here than just this particular property. Number three, please. Okay, you can see on number three, is that up? On three, that's the Woolly Pond area. In red, you see the subject property. And you can see the beach is a little narrow here, but it's much wider down towards the southwest. Could you put number four up, please? So four, again, you see Tempesta in red. You can see number one, there's a bulkhead hanging out into the water there. The property owner has basically put that in his backyard. So what's happened is the sand cannot come down from number one down to Tempesta, et cetera, because the shore hardening structure is interfering with the flow of sand. At number two, you see a property owner at the point who also grabbed the property. He stuck a rock revetment in. That holds the sand. It can't go down south. At number 3, you can see the rock revetment. Another property owner has held onto the sand there. At 4, there's a rock revetment at the entrance to Woolly Pond. The literal drift is from Woolly Pond, around that point, and then down the coast. From Woolly Pond, around the point, and down the coast. So because these shore hardening structures were all put in the way, the literal drift of sand is interrupted, and people don't get it. Number 5, if you'd put that up, please. That's looking south from the Tempesta property, and you can see how long the beach is there and how natural it is there. And you can see the seaweed line, and you can also see that it'd be a very beautiful place to walk. Number 6, please. Number 6 shows the Tempesta property. You can see right now it's only 1 story, and it is relatively close to the water. But you can also observe in this photograph that there's a lot of Phragmites on the property that's holding on to the soil there. There's a tree on the property, there's more Phragmites, and right now the application proposes to remove that, which would remove habitat and would destabilize that beach. We're recommending that that stay. Again, you can notice that the house is 1 story here. Yeah, right now, as it is, there's a danger, possibly, except for the sand from Woolly Pond. But it's not going to be 1 story there. They're knocking that down and they're moving that back. So that's already a mitigation measure that takes them out of any danger. Number 7, please. Number 7, you're looking up north on that barrier beach from Tempesta, and you can see a few things here. You can see there is the beach is relatively short, but you see the Phragmites again holding on to the soil there that we want to keep in place. And you can see the narrowing of the beach again. The northern end is narrowed because of the shore hardening structures. The other thing you'll note is there is a dock sitting pretty much on the public trust doctrine, or the public's right-of-way, the public's ability to walk. The Tempesta application also has a dock proposed right near the water, which is probably a bad idea. Further to the north, you can see, again, that property owner holding onto a lawn, which is keeping the sand from people down drift and grabbing property that should not be his. Put number 8 up, please. Number 8, you can see again from the Tempesta property looking north, somewhat narrow beach, but again, these shore hardening structures to the north are all in the way. It's shore hardening structures that are causing the problem. It's shore hardening structures that we have to say no to. Number 9, please. This is a view looking northeast from Tempesta towards Woolly Pond. Again, you can see the deck. It's sitting right on where you would walk. This is happening all over town. This is illegal. This is on public trust doctrine land. Bringing it back to Tempesta, I know you like that, Mr. Chairman. The deck is going to be too close again to the water. Why not put it on the 2nd story, on the balcony? You can have a beautiful view from there. Number 10, please. As you move up the coast, this is the house here at the tip, and they have bulkheaded their property. And you can see absolutely no beach. When you take a walk, a person always naturally wants to go to the point and enjoy the point. Here, if you're in any way an invalid or in a wheelchair or on a walker, you can't get there. You're not going to get around that point. The rock revetments have stolen the beach there. Again, rock revetments steal the beach in eroding areas. Number 11, please. I'm almost done.
Yeah.
Number 11, please, again. This is important, and this is for the record to protect the board in the event of an Article 78, which has been threatened tonight. This is the point, a bulkhead, and you can see again that the bulkhead is stealing sand that should be going to the downdrift owners, and it's causing erosion. And number 12, my last one, that's the entrance to Woolly Pond, and this rock revetment also is, you can see there's no beach in front of it. 13 quickly.
That was the last one.
Barrier Beach, the public trust doctrine covers water up to mean high tide. Again, this is the Barrier Beach, and you can see that the public can enjoy a beautiful walk from the water up to the mean high tide line. If you put a shore stabilizing structure here, it may even be that Pebble Beach that's talked about, we don't know yet. That needs to be a new application. If a static structure is put in a migrating environment, you will lose the beach. Number 14, please.
It was your last one.
Last one was 12.
Two ago was your last one. Please wrap it up.
All right, the very last one, I'll skip to 16 and skip these two, showing the wideness of
What's your
tap
last
point.
one?
This is important. 16. Okay, so the application proposes to move the shed. This is on the Tempesta property near the road. If that's moved, you can see there's a significant amount of space to move the house back, and that will be very helpful. I know some of this presentation tonight appears redundant to the board, but it will protect you in the event there is litigation, which has been threatened against you if you make a decision in favor of the environment. And I am very grateful that you've heard me out. I submit my report to the board as part of the record. And I thank everybody for moving in the right direction, once again. Thank you so much.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in this application?
Please, thank you. Yes, the
I
secretary.
want to apologize for standing up and jumping into the microphone.
That's good. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Judy.
Thank you so much for getting that. Yes. I'm just going to sign this because it asked me to. Okay. Good luck.
Judy Gallagher, I promised I'll be brief. But I have to say that one of the pictures, with all due respect, that the attorney said was from Tempesta's house, couldn't have been because it didn't even show my house, which is directly next door to it. And also, speaking to Mr. Petrillo's pictures, shouldn't we be looking at 2026 and not 25? It's a very big difference. I had Jen Tempesta at my house last week, and I said, look down towards your house. Your erosion is worse than me now, if that's even possible. I don't even know how that happened. But it is worse. So, I just want to point out that it seems like everybody's forgotten that a rock revetment is porous. It's not a hardened structure. Brian and I suffered the worst possible result in 1984 when the bulkhead next to us was permitted to be put on dry land. We lost a beach so quickly. I can't imagine that anybody spent this kind of time on worrying about what was going to happen in my house and the one next to it and downward there. We lost our beach when that bulkhead went up, and it was approved just like that. And I really want to say that, speaking as someone who built a big house where I built, how can other people who have also built a big house, there have been 5 that went up, how can they stand here and say that the Tempestas should not be allowed to make their house bigger? They're doing it with all respect to every possible, thing that people can come up with. How can some of the neighbors stand here and say that they shouldn't be allowed to do it? I can't even, please, people, I don't even know the word for it. And as one more thing, I never heard that before about the downdrift sand belonging to the next person. I remember every single thing that Marty Shea has ever said to me. And we were talking about how there suddenly was a kind of a dune down at Tad Point. And he said, that's your sand down there. So I can't imagine why could my lost sand be legally now part of somebody else's. I mean, I understand, surveys and all that, but that was my sand. That's all I'm saying. So those are my points. And please, the Tempestas should be allowed to do what anyone else has done.
We did not build a revetment.
didn't say you built a
Hey,
big
wait, can't, hey,
You built a big house and you don't want the Tempestas to build
Judy,
it slightly.
Judy.
I'm sorry,
Focus,
Face
focus to the.
us.
very sorry.
face us.
Okay, well, people who built a bigger house should not be telling the Tempestas that they shouldn't do it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
All right, thank you for your comments.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on this application?
Come on, please,
Is,
please. You're disrupting the meeting at this,
Anyone has something to say about their house?
do not disrupt this meeting or we'll stop it.
Somebody else. Cobble Beach plan. It's short. Just gotta make sure it's using the right size rock, and you need an actual truck. So we don't have a truck. And he agreed to come back with that.
Please.
Barry Topping, long-time resident of Southampton Shores. Thank you for all your hard work on this proposal, and some of this is repetition, I apologize, but I've worked kind of hard trying to prepare a statement. Several weeks ago, I attended the Conservation Board regarding the installation of a rock revetment on the property at East Beach Drive owned by the Tempesta family. Other homeowners have objected to such installation and have in fact been denied, as we have heard tonight. Ms. Tempesta seems to imply that the board was prejudicial, although other owners have, in fact, as I said, been denied such installation. Upon returning from the meeting, I felt angry that the blame seemed to have been placed on other owners on East Beach Drive, which you just heard. The Conservation Board, you guys, and a guilt trip placed on other homeowners for not wanting to pay to have the beach filled in at $140,000 a clip. The family who bought the property has lived in Southampton Shores or around Southampton Shores for a number of years, and obviously knew of the erosion issues along our shoreline. They bought the property anyway in hopes of being able to build a stone wall of some sort or a hardened beach structure and then construct a large house on a small lot. One does not buy a house next to an airport and complain about the noise and try to close the airport. You don't buy a lot or a house next to a playground or an athletic field and then complain that the children are too loud. Consequently, you don't buy a house on a piece of property that's being eroded by the water that's coming in at, as Mr. Ludlow said, at a very high rate of speed, and then expect everybody should kowtow and back off. The beach that extends from Willie's Pond to North Sea Harbor is one of the most beautiful beaches on the South Fork of Long Island, on the eastern South Fork of eastern Long Island. Families who have bought homes along the beach did so for that reason, and so they can swim, sail, kayak, walk, and enjoy the natural resources of this area. This beach protects diamondback turtles. It protects nesting horseshoe crabs. My son, who is the Pagonic baykeeper, was there several weeks ago observing the horseshoe crabs. He's also seen diamondback turtles there. We also have a number of foxes, deer, and other animals that use that beach. To say that we're not protecting, you have to protect the environment. That's the Conservation Board duty and job. The Southampton Shores Beach is one of the most valuable assets of the community. We have that long stretch with the pavilion. People walk the beach, they walk it in the winter, they walk it in the summer. I used to ride my horse there. I wouldn't be able to ride the horse on a cobblestone beach. My father was Warner H. Emerson. He was the president of the Colony Club for 26 years. During one of the winters during his tenure, he and other board members actually came out in the dead of winter, which at that time was when the Conservation Board always tended to meet, when nobody was here. And he and the other board members argued against the filling of that wetland at the end. And that was a marshland at the end of East Beach Drive. They ended up passing that and allowing the filling of that to put that large house, a large bulkhead, and
a patio, God knows, a pool and a patio. In doing so, the fiddler crab colonies, which we used to go down there in the rain and watch the fiddler crabs. Come on, let's go down, watch armies. We used to call them fiddler crab armies, and they would come up over that beach. So that was destroyed. The mussels were destroyed. The scallops, not the scallops, but the clams and the oyster beds in that area were destroyed. Bulkhead changed the topography and the landscape of the area. When it was approved by the Conservation Board, the Colony Club wanted to do legal action. Being a small community, we didn't have the wherewithal to do that. But what my father found later on was that not one person from the Conservation Board had actually gone out there and looked at the area. So they did not have the forward-thinking mentality that this board, who has worked so hard to try to be true conservators of our environment, they just rubber stamped it. And that's, as we know, the elephant in the room, as I said before, that caused this to happen. It is not the current Board of Conservation that's to blame, nor is it the other homeowners along the beach who had a sufficient amount of property to renovate or build their homes. This family knew what they were buying and decided to take a chance on a revetment being granted. To do so endangers all the other homes and the Colony Club property, which I am a part of, along the beach. It certainly also results in what we've talked about before, the domino effect that has happened between Willie's Pond and Jessup's. Go out out of Willie's Pond, take a right, you won't see there's one beach out there that's been scoured out. Otherwise, wall, wall, wall. Go to the edge of the wall, jump off, and that's where you go swimming, I guess. I do encourage and plead for the Board of Conservation to do the right thing and deny the hardening of the beach or the construction of a revetment of any kind, which will no doubt change the topography of the beach and be harmful to our native species and leave other homeowners with no choice but to go forward and follow suit. And just on an additional note, I'm a member of the North Sea Citizens Advisory Committee, and I brought this proposal to them the other night when we had our meeting. They took a vote and were 100% in favor of denying this application because they themselves live in North Sea. They spend many hours in the winter walking this beach. They want to be able to walk the whole beach. And they see the animals that are out there. They shore fish. They are very avid naturalists. And they all were in favor of the denial of this application. Thank you so much for your time. And I do this for the record.
It has to be stamped in. Maybe you could bring it to the secretary?
Where's it go?
The secretary, please.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in this application?
Okay.
All right. How much time you need?
We,
Yeah, good evening. So we will have we have a design for a cobble beach berm. We'll have the engineers put it together. We'll submit it next week. And, I'm ready to be heard in 2 weeks.
let's do it, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Is there a motion to adjourn this
Harry,
application?
there's someone on Zoom.
Excuse me?
Somebody on Zoom.
Someone's on Zoom?
Yes.
Okay. If someone's on Zoom, it's time to speak. We don't hear anything yet. I'll let you know when I hear something. It appears not to be working. Now, if there is someone on Zoom that wishes to speak, and apparently we have some issues here to make it so it doesn't work, you're free to, you're welcome to write something down, submit something in writing. You can submit that to the Conservation Board office anytime until the hearing is closed. And it carries as much weight as if you articulated it by voice.
Or appear in person or by Zoom on the next adjourned date that we are about to make a motion for.
We're about to make a motion to adjourn this to July 8th with the idea of getting a design for the cobble beach. And it is most likely, it'll be a very short meeting, and we'll close the hearing at the conclusion.
Motion to adjourn to July 8th.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion
Thank you.
to adjourn the meeting.
Do we just move to adjourn the meeting?
I just moved to adjourn the meeting.
Oh,
Just that.
it's been
Anyone
moved to
wanna
adjourn the
stay?
meeting?
Yeah.
And seconded?
I seconded.
And all in favor?
Aye.